Well, let's do it. So yeah, I guess the context for this was like the past, present, and future, right? But I'll leave it in your capable hands, Ben. You, it's your session. You can conduct it however you wish.
Cool. Oh, thanks for the love. Hold on, I'm just enjoying the hearts. So I guess the context around this is, as per the last couple of IG Live discussions that we've been involved with, we're in lockdown. We've got the time. We're probably feeling a bit lonesome. Keen to catch up with our friends, and it just seems like a good opportunity that was sparked by Tom Emerson to maybe have some deeper conversations that we could even broadcast live and be make available to watch later for the people that are interested. And I guess the way I see this is at least it's a spiritual successor to the last couple of conversations. The first one being between Tom and myself on contrasting movement practice with, practice with working out. And then recently you had a conversation with Tom and Patrick about self-development. There was some interesting conversations about looking to define or an attempt to define self and development and diving into attention and intention, which I thought was very cool, and uh, sharing stories about how each of you individually sort of have come to this point of practice and of being interested in self-development. And so I see this conversation or this interview or discussion as a spiritual successor to that. And I think what I'm feeling is that those conversations, interesting as they are, and of course I think like I was involved with one, so I think it's very interesting. Um, there's it's very easy to get into multiple layers of abstraction. So it starts with this physical experience of, we're doing this physical practice, and then we start to notice and we reflect on the practice, and we maybe start to notice certain phenomena that occur, certain meta patterns that start to emerge out of the practice, patterns of emotions, patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking, and it all revolves around this actual practice. But then these conversations are about these sort of abstracted experiences. And I think, again, these are very interesting conversations, particularly if you're already involved in a practice, because it's a chance to share and relate what you're feeling and thinking about with other people who are walking along a similar journey, along a similar path. But what I want to do with this conversation is to really ground it and bring it back to the practice itself and to what it is that we're doing. So I thought it could be interesting to ask you some questions, I guess to fill out the narrative that is the life of Phaon. You've spoken a few times now about your upbringing, your very being brought up in a very uh, a very directed environment where it's about being guided to perform, to study, to try to excel in and to compete, um, and finding some sort of freedom in your life when you went to university, but maybe having a feeling of listlessness through that journey, not really feeling if that was the path that you wanted to follow, and asking a lot of questions. And then you've talked about your experience of traveling through China and through Japan, and riding your bike, and even spending a couple of years traveling and doing so. Thanks, Amani. Great to see you, man. And uh, I thought what's missing there is a discussion about your actual, besides what's happening outside your practice, what was happening actually within your practice, what was going on there. And then we can still even talk about how it relates to concepts like attention and intention and courage and self-development. But I guess where I'd like to start is, could you tell me about how your training was was, well, what was happening and how was it developing in parallel to these life experiences? Maybe starting back with even with swimming, or if anything you began before that.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, just any kind of reflections you had. What did you find useful about the practice? What did you find less useful? And you know, I think the conversation will just sort of naturally emerge from there. But yeah, could you tell me a bit about your where you began with your practice?
Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Let's talk specifics. Let's talk what the practice actually looks like. I like this. And
Yeah.
if we unravel it, going back to the start, so I could say that my first physical practice, even though I wouldn't have termed it in these terms, was swimming because I was put in the pool at 3 months old, swimming
Wow. Yeah.
very frequently. I was one of those, water babies, and my mum and dad used to take me to swimming training a lot. So already by the age of like 4, I think I was starting to do some small competitions. And
Wow.
as long as I can remember, I was in the pool a lot, a lot. So this was like 4 a.m. wake up sessions. So from about like 4 to 12, I was like in the pool training quite a lot. But also in parallel to this, I actually had a taekwondo practice. So my dad at
Ah.
that time was very interested in martial arts. I think he still is. And so he was practicing a little bit, but he would take me to these taekwondo sessions. I would always watch all these like action movies with him on the weekends. So things like, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jackie Chan, all that sort of stuff. So I loved it.
Hmm.
And so even though I was very academically driven as well, where grades mattered a lot, I was put in environments where I was able to express and train my body quite regularly and frequently. And so this was from a very young age. And yeah, I remember practicing Taekwondo a lot, especially in my basement. We used to have like a big heavy punching bag, and I'd be
Wow.
kicking that thing. There would there used to be a basketball as well, and we had this balance task where you had to balance on top of the basketball,
Oh,
and then
cool.
the ultimate progression was when you went down from the basketball balancing into this frog stand, you gripped the basketball between your feet, and then you had to go into a headstand, bringing up the basketball all the way up, and then all the way back down, and then stand back up on the basketball again. I don't know why this was like the feat, but I just remember this so vividly, practicing this so many times because it was like on the path to become a black belt or something. You had to do this task. So I was like,
Dude,
I need to be
dude,
a
that's the new Rail Dragon Squat challenge.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We can bring back the childhood memories that I remember practicing that heaps, just trying to balance on the basketball, then trying to do like that frog stand and then the
Wow.
headstand as well. And I don't know how I managed this, but I would do that in parallel with the swimming. And then at some stage, the taekwondo practice actually fell away. So I can't remember too much of that because I think that it was probably like before I was 10 even, or 10 or 11, that where
Hmm.
that started falling away. I did actually end up doing some taekwondo competitions because I
Oh,
remember having some fights, and I think it was only one or two, and I had all the kit, I had like the
wow.
target on me and all the pads and things like that. But it must have been something that clicked more with swimming, or maybe I showed more prowess with there, where I started concentrating more of my efforts. I started specializing in swimming.
Mm,
And what
mm.
I can remember of that period is just like endless laps. It was like, you want to become a better swimmer, you just keep on swimming. So, and do what the coach says. And it was just drills of how to do certain strokes and then building up insane amounts of endurance. I'd be
Huh.
like doing anywhere from 5 all the way up to 10, 12 Ks per session. And you
How,
just
how
be
old were
like,
you at this point?
so this was probably from the ages of like 10 to 14 when I was doing
Yeah.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Wow.
I was training anywhere from 5 up until I think one point I did like some weeks where I was doing like 8. So I'm not sure how my parents managed to send me to all these sort of trainings, but that's what that's what it was. There was
Yeah.
no real additional physical training alongside that. I remember at some point just trying to do push-ups or some band work, but at that point there was a bit of a narrative about I don't know if you remember, but like stunting your growth with weights or weight training.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you didn't really want to do that because I was this small Asian kid as well, and you don't want to take any chance away from you of like growing any taller, right? So it's like,
100%.
I don't know about this. You kind of engage with it. It feels a little bit good, but you're a little bit scared as well. So those are like
Yeah.
my earliest memories. But I do remember just you get to this point in swimming training as well, where the water just becomes like your friend. So the way
Mm.
you glide in the water and the way you travel through the water, you end up being able to, it feels different. And so when you put your hand, like when you're doing freestyle and it comes in, I would know that feeling when I was well practiced or well trained because it would feel like, like a hot knife slicing through butter. It would just be
Ah,
gliding. Like I can't get that same feeling anymore, but
when,
I
when
know
you can't
through
get
all
that same
those
feeling when swimming or in
yeah,
anything.
with swimming
Okay.
now because I know that is I think like you just need like a lot of time in the water and then technique practicing. But that's a feeling that once you experience it, you kind of know it's like oh this is what practice can bring you. And so I was pairing that with like weekend competitions for like almost every weekend as well. And so I think reflecting back onto that, that definitely instilled like a very big competitive drive in me because like I was winning at that time, so that felt really good.
Was all
Uh,
this taking place in Melbourne or were you somewhere else?
yeah, I was in Melbourne or in regional parts of Melbourne that, for the competitions. You're always like traveling to like Ballarat or Shepparton or some faraway place just to race, and it'll be like an all-day competition. I used to get so nervous that like it was actually a bit of a problem where
Huh.
I would sometimes throw up, and I'd know that because I'd suddenly started building all this self pressure onto me as well,
Yeah.
and I would know that if I didn't throw up, that I had a very strong chance of winning, but if I threw up, that was it. It was over. It was like sixth,
Wow.
seventh place because all the energy came in. So yeah, there
Do
was a
do
lot going on
what
there.
was the intent behind the training there? Like, was there a certain goal that either you or your parents had in mind, like a certain level that you were trying to reach?
I'm not sure for my parents. I can't speak like on their behalf. I mean, maybe a lot of the stuff that they were putting me through was actually to get into a better school because you can get scholarships through, academic or music
Mm,
or in swimming as well. At that time, I think swimming was starting to become really popular because of all the Olympics and stuff, and all these private schools were handing out scholarships. So I was actually like offered one as well to this prestigious private school at one point
wow.
just via swimming.
Wow.
So maybe that was it, path to an accessible, better education. For me,
Right.
I wasn't quite so intentional. It just felt good winning. I just wanted to be the best, you know? So it's like you're just training, you're not really questioning it too much, but when it comes to competition, it was like, oh, well, I'm like winning feels good, so I want to come
Yeah.
first. Even if I became second or third, never really feels as good as coming first, right? You get a
Huh.
medal, but just didn't have that mindset there of, um, yeah, it was very potentially outcome orientated. So
Hmm.
there was a point where doing all this swimming training, we finally, I think once I started maturing through adolescence, started coming to my mind, going like, yeah, what's the point? Like,
Mm,
because then I started questioning, going, oh, am I really going to become like a swimmer in my life? At that time as well, everyone else was having their growth spurts. I was suddenly like not on the same physical level as everybody else.
Like I
And
shouldn't have
so,
done all those banded push-ups. Oh,
well,
oh, it's coming back
maybe
to
I should
haunt
have,
me.
maybe I should have done more, right? So I
Yeah,
remember
maybe.
in my physical development, all these people were suddenly like a lot bigger and a lot stronger. I was like, what's going on? And I couldn't, I couldn't keep up with them as much because, yeah, mine just came on a little bit later, or like I'm not as tall as everybody else, so my feet aren't as big. So I started specializing like within breaststroke as well because that seemed to be less dominated by that, and with technique you could still like keep up.
Mm,
But I think that started raising the questions of just going, oh, am I going to become like an Olympic swimmer? Is that what I'm gonna going to do? Should I be focusing on something else? And at that time, the narrative is like go to school, get good grades, and then you'll be sweet. So it's like,
mm.
well, maybe I don't want to be staring at this black line for 2 hours every day anymore. Because with swimming, it's not very social. Your head's down in the water the whole time. When you come up, you're just met with like a whistle from the coach to go again. And part of that maybe is a good thing as well because it sort of makes you very internally focused because
Mm,
then you're just concentrating on the feeling in the water and looking at this black line. Yeah, your thoughts can take you away as well, but a lot of it as well is like focus because you're trying to go
yeah,
fast and you're thinking about your stroke technique and everything else. So in one way, maybe that has had far-reaching effects in terms of how I operate now. I'm sure it does because, you
mm,
know, if you do something for 10 or so years, it's definitely going to have an impact, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I,
So
I wanted I
those,
wanted to ask quickly about the time. You said you'd wake up at 4 a.m. to go swimming.
mhm.
Do you think like is that a behavior that has persisted? Or do you find that have you always been an early riser because of that?
No,
And do you ever wonder if that sleep deprivation could have had some longer term impact, getting a child to wake up that early every day?
no, no. I think I was going to bed at like 8 o'clock, so I was
Okay.
still like sleeping quite a bit, but that behavior has definitely not carried through. So I'm not an early riser. In fact, I think
Sure.
my optimal bedtimes is somewhere between like 11 and 7, or 11:30 and 7:30. That's like when I do that, it feels really, really good. I've definitely experimented with trying to consistently wake up early once again or later. Like all throughout uni, I was waking up like terrible body clock.
Yeah.
Um, but around from 11 to 7, I feel the best. So yeah, haven't haven't carried that behavioral trait through. And in fact, I remember always waking up and complaining and sleeping in the car on the way to swimming training. But it
Yeah.
seems to be one of those strange sports where for whatever reason, you need to get into the pool as early as possible. They never really figured out why you couldn't train just in the afternoons like every other sport. You had to do it first thing in the
Oh,
morning.
yeah, that is interesting. It's never occurred to me before, but that's right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, swimmers get up very early, but I mean, I guess if runners as well would get up, like maybe more individual sports, like people would get up early to go running. I know fighters get up early, like to do their runs or to train, but yeah, team sports, maybe it's just hard to get that many. Like it's hard enough to get one person up early, but to get a whole team up early,
Yeah.
it's too unreliable. So you went. So was there a certain point when you remember like drifting away from swimming? Um, was there, yeah, or was it even a drift, or was there a certain point where you're like, that's it, I've had enough?
Yeah.
And then,
So
yeah.
in like year 9, I switched schools. I got into a private school. I
Hmm.
like got an academic scholarship. So then it was like, okay, now I've got to concentrate more on my studies. Swimming started falling away a little bit. I was still swimming training quite a bit, but then I think at that point, then it was combined with that same age where, my physical dominance was starting to really lack as well. I couldn't keep up with just like the bigger, stronger kids. And so that combined with um, a changing of environment by going to a new school, a school that was far away. as well. It just meant it was like it was tough to keep up this like action-packed schedule, right? Like swimming training all the time, and then I was doing music as well, and then trying to study, and so you have to start, start concentrating
Triaging.
on something, and then at that time is like, well, year 11 and 12 is coming up, and as year 11 and 12 came up, then it was just solely focused on like academic
Right.
study rather than any sort of like extracurricular activities. So I think that's where it really started to drop away.
So, the school that you went to, the private school that you got into, was that the same school that the swimming helped you qualify for?
No, it wasn't. So it was different.
Okay.
I yeah, it was through academic tests that I got into to that one. Although I
Okay.
did swim for that school, um, and you know that was my thing, like summer swimming there. I think I still got one of the age group records, which is good. But
Oh, wow.
um,
So,
yeah, but then it just started becoming less important, I think. Or and then I think for my parents as well was stress less importance as well.
right. So that after year 11 and 12, and yeah, did you have any kind of physical practice during those very heavy academic years? If so, what was it? And then, or and if not, at what point did you find yourself back in some sort of physical practice?
Yeah, I can't really say that I had too much of physical practice. I did school sport,
Okay.
so during those times, you know, I played volleyball. I played field hockey as well, but I can't say that I entered into any of those with the same vigor or the same like uh, consistency of the training that I had before. So
Were you choosing those sports, the school sports, or did you have to
yeah,
do
I was
school sport anyway? So you're just like, well, I'll just do those.
exactly.
Okay, so
You just
there wasn't a real conscious choice on your part to like independently go into some sort of sport or physical practice.
well, you choose like the act of the choice is nice because then you choose something that you like, right? I didn't choose AFL or some other one. I like chose those ones.
Right.
Um, but I guess I didn't really go in with hey, I'm going to really train and I'm going to really, really concentrate and try and do really, really well for me. Although that same competitive drive was still within me, so it was kind of a bit frustrating that I wasn't
Mm,
doing well, right? But then you weren't really devoting the time and the energy to do well.
yeah, that's interesting. So was can you remember there being some sort of tension or conflict in terms of your like the filter through which viewed physical activity at that point was motivated by the the reward that you got from winning previously. You know, that's the kind of conditioning, the habit that had been established, and now you're doing some other activity and still pseudo competitive because they're sports where it's like a team versus another team.
Mm.
Um, so then you found yourself questioning, like, what's the point? Like, why am I doing this? Or was it the point is still to win, but because I'm not winning, I'm constantly getting this negative experience.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that, and it's a little bit like questioning your identity because then you're identified with being like a winner from before, and then suddenly in
Yeah.
these new areas, you're like, I'm not so great in this, and I'm not even in the first. You know, you're like in the seconds or in the third that team, and then you're losing, and you're like, this kind of sucks a bit, and then you. But then I'm like training with other people, so you're dependent with other people as well, and that was new to me, working with other
Mm,
people because I was always very much solo, right, in the pool, and it was just me. So I didn't really figure that one out, I think.
yeah.
Although that was interesting because suddenly you could just talk and hang out with people at the same time as you were training. So you're like, oh, that's nice. Um,
Yeah.
but that definitely has a whole new dynamic on yeah how you perceive things. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of a disconnect there. But as I said, throughout those periods, it was still like I think the physical part of my life. was very much like an afterthought during those years.
Okay. So then when did you find it again, or what was the point at which you found yourself in a practice again, and what was that?
So this was during university, and so
Okay.
finished school, and when you finish school, you're a young, hot-blooded male. You want to prove yourself. Been watching all these action movies as well. You're thinking Jean-Claude Van Damme looks pretty good, and he's doing all this stuff. Like, what sort of stuff is he doing? Then you start
Mm,
getting into Arnold Schwarzenegger as well, and you're like, well, he's talking about the gym a lot. Oh, the gym. And the first time you go to the gym, it's a little bit of a scary experience as well. You're like,
yeah.
as a young guy who's never been in there before, never done any sort of weight training, kind of like, I don't know about this. It's a bit weird. It's a bit strange. Am I doing anything right? But I found the gym and I started going there with an older friend of mine who was like 2 or 3 years older.
Okay.
And through, I guess, his guidance or the fact that I had somebody there to support myself with to go to the gym to suck together at, then you're like, okay, this is gonna be all right. And so I started going there. And when you go to the gym as well, you're, I think as a young man as well, you're like determined to figure everything out by yourself, right? So you don't ask for
Mm,
any help. You just go there and you start playing around with things. You start going on the internet. You start researching yourself, trying to find whatever is right to do and piece it together, right? So I remember there with my friend trying to piece things together, and at the time, you find stuff on the internet which is talking all about like these big lifts like squat, deadlift, bench, row. It's all about that. And so I
yeah.
started really uh, liking all this stuff because that's what I was reading, and it was like people on the internet were saying that this was the stuff to do to grow a really strong, functional body. I was doing it. I was getting stronger because of you could see it with all the weights increased. You could see it with the physical transformation within my body. It felt really good as well because you have like extreme dopamine hits whenever you like squat as well. So I was like, this is awesome.
Mm,
And then combined with that, at the gym, the Monash University gym, still one of the best gyms, I think, because
oh,
everyone in there is really at a similar time and place in their life as well, all these other university students. So you're
mm,
bonding with all these other like young males looking to prove themselves as well and who are very regular. So I really enjoyed it because it ended up being that I knew that whatever time of day I would go to the gym, even if I went by myself, there would be like at least one or two people that I would recognize and I would know, and you'd be able to have a
yeah.
conversation with as well. So it became a very much a social place for me as well. That became
Yeah,
very
that's cool.
important. I knew all the trainers, I knew some of the other guys training. Sometimes we'd train together. You'd bond or make these friendships just over this simple question, such as like, "Hey man, can you give me a spot?" And then before you know
Mm,
it, you like know this guy, right? I still know this, so like a lot of these guys just from that, right? And with that, I think I
mm,
just started reconnecting with my love for being physical, and that must have
mm,
been carrying through from a younger age. He started making me feel good because I was desiring to become stronger. Like what I was saying before, my my ability to win was kind of taken away because my body was a slower developer in comparison to all the other kids. So suddenly I was like, all right, I'm 18, 19, my growth spurt should have already finished now. Now it's time, like it's safe enough to do weights according to all the narrative at that moment. I found
mm,
this tool now where I can shape and sculpt my body as well, and it feels really good. And
mm,
when I'm there, I also do it with these other guys who are in the same battle with me. Oh, this is amazing. So it was
Yeah.
like that whole mix where it just became incredibly intoxicating. Like I was never really going to that much uni class, and I didn't have that many contact hours anyway. And then I would just make sure I'd just be going to the gym almost like every day, and I would love it.
Wow.
I'd go there, and you just have like 1 to 2 hours sessions, and I'd be researching on the internet as well because I was like, oh, what's the most efficient ways of getting strong? So
Yeah.
that's where I actually came onto the early CrossFit blog very early on as
Oh,
well. And I was like, oh, this is interesting stuff. So I was doing like a few workouts of the days, that sort of thing. Very
yeah.
like when it was just like text-based stuff and people would post their times and things like that.
What year would that
Um,
have been,
I can't,
roughly?
yeah, like two, 2007, 2008, that sort of
Okay. Wow, that is early.
era. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and then there was like all the strong lift stuff as well. So that's where I really started bonding with lifting big weights. So
Mm,
squat, deadlift, not in like a powerlifting style, but just like in a, hey, I want a strong functional body.
mm,
And then I started getting into Olympic weightlifting as well because one of the old guys there at the
mm.
gym was always doing all these Olympic lifts. So I was like, that looks amazing. Like
Yeah.
I want to do that. And he taught me how to do it at the gym. So I started doing all these clean and jerks and snatches and then just researching that on the internet, how to do all that. And then that kept on feeding, yeah, this desire for me to get stronger, right? So as I kept on going into it, I felt good, I felt stronger, and then I was like learning these more complex lifts as well. And so it was like
Mm.
this magical mix, right? And so I was really pushing my body like quite to the limit there, I think, because I just wanted to get stronger like all the time. And I kept on doing that probably until like 21-ish. And then
Okay.
I started having the desire again to actually do a team sport.
Oh.
So, and this was really important because I was like, oh, okay, like I want to meet some more people. I want to play hockey. Like I'll join the university hockey team. So I went over and applied and I started like training with them. And I remember at that time I was like, I was getting like kind of a bit big or bulky, like for my frame as compared to where I was before.
Was that
And I was
intentional?
like, uh, yeah, it was intentional because I wanted to like gain weight.
Yeah.
Definitely taking like all the creatine, protein, all that sort of stuff, along with like melted cheese, tuna mayo sandwiches. That was like my
Nice.
that that was my nutrition. If anyone wants to
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
20-year-old male nutrition, that's the way, the perfect mix of carbs, fats, and protein.
Protein. Now, with that sandwich, was it a sandwich? Like, was the bread at room temperature, or was it a toasted sandwich?
It was a toasted sandwich. Yeah.
That's the move, man. Yeah. That's funny. I used to do the same. Yeah. I'm like I hadn't remembered it until you mentioned it, but I'm getting these vivid like sensory memories of toasted cheese and tuna sandwiches.
It's because you buy a can of tuna, it's like 50 cents or something. You can
Yeah.
buy a loaf of bread for nothing. It's like the uni student budget.
And you're right. You look at it, you're like, well, that's all my macros. I've nailed it. Wow. Just hearing you talk about the gym and that social aspect is also making me feel um, quite deeply nostalgic and sentimental. But yeah, for that time around when I was around a similar age going to the gym, but even just pre-pandemic and when I was living in Canada and working in a gym, on reflection, that was my favorite. That's why I stuck around. It's why largely why I stayed in Canada was because of that social environment where, just like you're saying, there are those regulars that come in every day, and whether they're your clients or other trainers or just members or other employees, like there's this, yeah, there's this continuity to it, and it's a bit like a jungle. There's this sort of wild nature where you'll see some crazy shit once in a while, It's just unbelievable, and it's a place where you're constantly working on yourself and like
Yeah.
feeling awesome. Yeah.
It's like, it's amazing, right? When you
Mm,
have that environment around you and it is allowing you to express these desires or develop your identity as well. And
mm,
people are supportive and on their own journeys as well. And you're like comparing kind of semi-competitively, but also cooperatively as well. It's very
yeah.
intoxicating.
Yeah. And it's a different format to sport where there's a clear end goal. Like even if you just like doing the sport for the sake of doing the sport, it's still um it's still very task oriented. Like I'm going to swim 50 meters and I'm going to try to go at this pace with this stroke. I'm going to compete, and it's for the purpose of competition, of racing with other people. But when you're in when you're working out in a gym, um, I guess on a micro sense, like there is some level of that structure where maybe you've decided you're going to do a certain number of sets with a certain number of reps and a certain amount of weight. Um, but there's never a clearly defined, or there's not a collectively agreed upon end goal of where
Mm.
we're going to do this, or eventually we compete together with this certain rule set. So it's an inherently more open format, which maybe facilitates what you're saying, that both that slightly cooperative or that slightly competitive, but also cooperative um, practice.
It's like trying to explore where your potential lies, right? It's
Mm,
this uncertain place where you don't really know. Sometimes you kind of set this goal going like, yeah, I want to lift 200 kilos in deadlift, right? Because it just seems to
mm,
be like the goal to do. And you try and set like a timeline to get it, but you don't really get it. But it's all self-driven and
so,
yeah, and it's all really like self-driven, or self-selected. And then if you don't reach it as well, it's kind of like, oh, it's like all right. It's not like the end of a game where there's definitely a winner and a loser. So you just keep on continuing, right? And then you go in again, then you feel good. So you're like, hey, this just like feels good, right? So that's keeps you going. But yeah, uh, I'm not sure what happened, but I think I just started getting a desire to express myself outside of the gym. So that's why I wanted to
mm,
re-enter into team sports. And I kind of like that social aspect a lot, especially from team sports from my early experience from school. So I was like, okay, like yeah, let's do field hockey because I kind of enjoyed that as well.
mhm.
And I remember going to this field hockey training, carrying on this identity of going, I'm big and strong now, like I should be really good, right? Because like I can lift really big weights in the gym.
Yeah.
And I remember just going to this training and just being like, what the hell is going on? I can't move my legs. Like I feel like I can't run with any agility at all. Like I was a
Ah,
big oaf. So I like had these big strong legs that even like for field hockey, you kind of have to bend your legs and then crouch over the ball for long
mm.
periods of time. I remember trying to do that and just my legs were just like burning like you could never believe, right? Because it was this unusual position which I hadn't practiced any endurance in. So I sucked at it. I couldn't dribble like up and down the pitch without like crying because it was like
Ah.
this really hurt. And then even just trying to run around and keep up with people, that sort of thing. In a straight line, like I was all right, but any time where you had to like chase someone, that do that sort of thing, I just I remember just having this feeling going like something wrong, like
Mm,
what's happened now? And then I just realized going, I just built all these like what I thought big strong legs. Internet was telling me that this is everything that you need to do, and then you'll be right, you'll be able to do whatever you need to do. And I'm like, it's not really working at all. So that forced me to start reorientating, where I was like, maybe what I was doing isn't really like. the answer. There's definitely some level of physical training that I have to do now, like for my legs and for my body, to get this feeling of, how I was talking about this feeling of in the water when I was training a lot in the pool, how you just get this feeling of gliding through the water. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, how do we be like gliding through the pitch? Because there's definitely guys out there who are running around and they look like they're gliding through the pitch. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, like maybe like it's not just the gym. So then I started like running heaps. And so I was like running a lot.
Huh.
And then I was going to hockey training all the time and trying to like do all this hockey training. I was doing some solo training for that as well. But I had no concept of load management. So I kept with my heavy gym training session as well.
Oh, wow.
When I was just like squatting and deadlifting my way to death and Olympic lifting, all this stuff. And then trying to do like a full season of hockey where I was running around all the time. Sometimes I would go straight from the gym to like hockey training as well, because at that
Wow.
time I
Yeah.
felt like I could do it with my body. And I remember there were certain times where at the start of the season, I feel really good. I'd be like, yeah, this is it, killing it. And then I would just die because there was no deloads or anything. My programming at the gym was always I got stuck in this program called like 531 by Jim Wentler. I don't know if you ever heard it, but
No, I
it was
haven't.
great. I mean, that had some sort of like, I guess, programming aspect to it, but basically it's like on the first week you're doing like working up to five rep max. But then the
Hmm.
last set is always where you do like 5 reps plus. So you try and max out with the most amount of reps that you can do.
Hmm.
And that felt really great because you always had this opportunity every single session to like overdo your best, right? And to
Yeah.
push to the
Yeah.
absolute maximum limit. And then the next week was like 3 reps, same thing. And then the third week was like 1 rep and then 1 rep plus.
Yeah.
So I freaking love that because you have to like pounding yourself to it. And then he had this thing
Wow.
of like accessory exercises as well for these main lifts, where it just meant you could just go nuts on either volume or like trying to find like your weak points. But at that time, I was just like addicted to putting on all this volume as well, because then that would give me the pump, right? So I was like
Mm.
really fatiguing my body, which was masked sort of for a while due to my youth and my capacity to
Mm.
recover because of my youth. But then definitely as I was running throughout all of hockey, that's when certain like I started getting like severe bouts of fatigue where I wouldn't be, I would be like running through the pitch through certain match games and then just being like, I feel like my legs have no run in them. Like I'd still be able to run, but not be able to be only operating at like 60, 70% and just feel really fatigued. But for whatever reason, I was just like addicted to the gym. I was playing hockey and I still wanted to win. So I was kind of trapped in this cycle, right? Where you just didn't want to give anything up. So you just keep on doing everything, but then not
Mm.
really have any sort of awareness around the sensitivity of the body and methods to then be like, okay, maybe I just really need to cut back. Until I just got like injured, like I pulled like something in my thigh and then it's like, oh, that sucked. Or I like got uh, some sort of like injury in hockey and that made me stop and take a break. But then you
Mm.
just work your way up back to that same intensity and then be like, oh yeah, this is the intensity that I operate in. And again, like for the first 1, 2 months, feel great. And then afterwards, just a big, just slippery downhill slope.
So I'm wondering if this is accurate, because it sounds like when you were when you were younger and you were involved in swimming, especially, maybe one of the values that was instilled was this idea that if you um, if you practice regularly, then you'll get better at a thing. You'll get better at the thing that you're practicing. And perhaps because you were sort of outsourcing the programming in a sense to your coach, you had a coach there who was just telling you what to do. there may not have been the opportunity for you to cultivate that awareness around, well, what it's not just doing the thing, it's, well, what exactly am I doing? How many times am I doing it? What, how much rest am I taking? All these other variables. So would it be fair to say that perhaps you took that mentality of at least understanding, if I want to get better at a thing, I need to practice the thing perhaps daily, and you develop that momentum and that habit. But then when it came to um, working on a skill for the sports, like the field hockey, you took it upon yourself to start training and working on your weak links for that you identified it within that sport. But then all you knew how to apply was that mentality of, well, I identify the thing I'm going to work on, and I just do that every day. And so, and then that's compounded with, well, I'm also doing this weightlifting because I have these goals of getting stronger and bigger. So I just do that every day. And then, but even in that case, I suppose you're saying that the programming you were doing was, again, outsourced to this 531, as an example of that 531 program. So is that kind of accurate, that perhaps you had the understanding and the momentum behind you to know that if I want to get better at something, I do it frequently. Um, but up until that point that you're now describing of at least with the field hockey, you hadn't actually had to develop that and the nuances of it yourself. And so, well, you're learning through trial and error at that point. You're making mistakes and then having to figure out, well, what am I doing wrong, or what do I need to change?
Yeah, it's like you've only got one intensity level as well, which is hard.
Ah, yeah.
And it's like, all right, I'm doing this. I got to do it hard. Go hard or go home. No, no pain, no gain,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's compounded as well with you reach a certain level with like lifting a certain level of weight as well. And you don't want to let that go, right? You're like, once you've squatted like 150 kilos, you're like, well, that's who I am. I'm a guy who squats 150 kilos. If I start
Yeah.
running, you know, 10, 20K in addition to that, because I'm doing hockey or whatever, I need to still be able to lift 150 kilos in the squat or feel like, I'm
Oh,
pushing myself to do that. And so that's where,
that's so true, and
yeah,
that's so common, isn't it? Like
mm,
I hear people all the time will say that they'll resist trying new things because they're worried that it will affect what they're already doing,
mhm.
and it may in some cases.
Yeah. And I just didn't have the awareness to be like, hey, it's all right to let go of something that you've achieved before or to concentrate on a certain area and then for another area to not be as good as before. That never really crossed my mind in terms of going like, ah, that's acceptable. Because I
Mm,
think throughout those years before, when you first go to the gym for the first 2 years, it's like unbelievable, right? Because it's like week on week, every single week, you're gaining.
yeah, gains on
And,
gains.
and then you get addicted to this train of gains and you don't know anything else, right? So if you ever see anything decreasing, it's like something's wrong with you.
Mm,
And unless you have an injury and you can play that excuse to your mind of going like, oh, it's because I was injured, that's why I'm not as good. It's like, well, why aren't you gaining then? If you're not gaining,
yeah.
then like it's almost like something's inherently wrong with your physical body. So
Mm,
I was kind of like
mm,
holding on a little bit to that idea, and I still wanted to feel like strong as well in those areas because I think yeah during this time there was like some things about standards as well with like you need to be able to bench your own body weight, squat twice
right.
your body weight, deadlift 3 times your body weight, that sort of thing is like
Well,
if
those
you
those
can do
standards are
that.
still around.
Yeah, and well, whoever made those up is like infiltrated everyone's mind. It's like if you can do that, then you're a functional, strong human being.
Yeah.
You can do
Then
whatever
then
the
you're
world.
acceptable.
Exactly. So that was like a little bit in my mind, right? So I'm always like, oh, I need to still be lifting all this stuff, and I can't let go. But field hockey felt really good as well. Like I was making friends through there. When you score a goal, when you win, feels amazing. So
Yeah.
you want to do really well there. And then at that time in university, I still had time to kind of train both things. So it's just like, yeah, I'll just keep on trying to train both things and not let any of them go. But not really question going like, oh, okay, if I'm going to put more physical stress on my body, how do I recover? Like, never really thought about any of that because, I mean, compounded at the time, you're in extreme uni party mode as well. So, going out once, twice, three times a week, and that felt really good as well. Say you're just like not sleeping right, and you're not eating right, and you're drinking alcohol like in copious amounts. So it's like a whole ridiculous mix, right? Kind of sounds like if you were to do it now, like it'd be instant death. But for some reason,
Yeah.
for some reason during university, you're just able to do it, and that was like that was how it was. Um, but
Well, you just
yeah,
discovered all those things too at that point, right? Like it's just this
exactly.
wondrous, like this life can be this good. It can feel like, wow, this is what life's going to be like. All right, let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah. Um, and so I think that's yeah, there's probably like two things I want to raise here, which is yeah, again that field hockey training thing definitely was the roots of going to me going like okay, just going down and specializing down one path isn't the way, and there definitely is like you can get sucked into dogmas there, and then once you try and apply yourself in another field, it suddenly opens you up and exposes you, and you have no
Mm,
choice but to face it and be like, okay. So then I started, always making sure that I was running around doing all that sort of stuff, so that I had like more functional legs, right? And I was never like condemned and stuck to being too heavy and bulky. That
mm.
that was really really strong message to me from that period. I just wasn't very intelligent in my approaches for a while there. Um, yeah, and then I think another point, which is actually from the partying side, which is like I think quite important to share actually with people, is like that broke me out of a dogma to question certain things because I remember the first time I went to a party and I took drugs. And then the day afterwards, the morning afterwards, I remember sitting there feeling like so good. I was like, how come everyone's saying that this stuff is illegal and it's like so bad for you and everything?
Well, which drugs, if you don't mind me asking?
MDMA.
Okay, as far
And
as you
then,
knew.
yeah, and then say, yeah, it's not, it could have been whatever, I don't know. Say, and then you're like sitting there the next day and you're just like, I remember with my friend, it's like beautiful day the next day, and we're kind of like, buzzing right still. And we're like, what have we
Sure.
done? What have we done? Like, that was really illegal. But then you're sitting there and it's like, and it felt so good. And I felt so
Mm,
bonded, with him as well because, chemicals and everything. But that definitely like tore down a whole belief system as well, where I started going like, oh, the world's telling you one thing, but you've just experienced something else. Maybe that isn't right. Maybe I can't
yeah.
just accept that as gospel and just being like, hey, there is like black and white lines here. This is bad and this is good. There was definitely a huge switch that changed within my mind where I was like, shit, I need to like think for myself here because
That's why the band doesn't want you taking them, man.
potentially, but yeah, that was a distinct, yeah, very strong memory from that first experience of taking that, and then
Mm.
that yeah, I think that had far-reaching consequences for how I started like viewing and trying to seek out information and trying to interpret information as well.
And thus began your life as a MDMA drug lord.
That was one way that definitely could have could have gone potentially. No, I don't know. Like I always knew that it was just like something to indulge in, something that was like on the like I liked partying because once again like I was really connecting with the social side of myself and
Mm.
being able to express myself through there, and I really like the music as well. But it's never
Mm,
like something where I was like, this is the best shit, and I got to take it like all the time, right? It was like, I always had like some awareness over me that it was like, yeah, it felt really good, but there was definitely some consequences as well, and it was
yeah,
like maybe not so good for my body.
yeah.
It
Everything has a
never,
cost.
yeah, it never was like, I just take this stuff and it just feels really good, and then just keep on taking more. No, yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't like that.
So then what was the next step? So you started to like did you find that the practice, the running, that were you getting better at field hockey, or did you find that all the overlapping practices of weightlifting and running and trying to get better at this sport while in university, did it all reach a breaking point? Like what was the yeah, what happened next?
Yeah, I started getting better at hockey. I made the first team for a bit as well. That felt really good. Definitely had certain breaking points where like I had several like leg injuries. Um, I also had like several like big injuries like outside of it that also forced me to slow down. Like I had a skiing accident where I subluxed
Right.
my right shoulder, and
Oh,
so that had me like reassessing things because then like my right shoulder was painful. I never really sought out, I guess, good rehab for it either. I just
mm,
I'm not sure how I really approached it now. I've kind of forgotten, but I kind of cobbled it together, and then I was like, how do I get back to lifting big weights again? That's basically the goal, right? Um,
yeah.
my left foot as well was completely crushed when I was working at this warehouse factory, and then yeah, I had these like movable pallet movers, and it got trapped between like when I was reversing out with one between that and another pallet in my boot. So it was kind of like it was it was crushed in between there, and then
Oh,
I didn't need any surgery, but yeah, all these little fractures happened within the foot. So I was in a moon boot for
yeah.
like 3 or 4 months. So those
Oh,
times out definitely, got me to reconsider things, and I couldn't express myself physically as well.
mm,
But I think during those times, then I just wasn't expressing myself so much physically. I mean, I think the moon boot for me was all right because it meant I could still like do bench, do rows, that sort of thing. I definitely found ways around that. With the shoulder thing, I was very cautious with that and very scared. So I didn't really do anything upper body. It was kind of like, oh, this hurts. I don't really want to aggravate it. I'm just going to avoid it. There was that
mm,
sort of mentality. But for whatever reason with the moon boot, I was like, I was pretty good with that. We're still trying to do other sort of activity where I could, and then trying to get back on my feet and running as quickly as possible. So yeah, I had sort of different approaches, but I didn't really, again, I don't think there was like too much um, awareness or intelligence about how I was approaching things. It was just like, how do I get myself back up to 100% intensity again? Because I love that.
huh.
Mm.
So was there a period after um would the next step be in terms of the physical practice? Would it be the bike trip? And or was there something that happened
Yeah,
in
so
between?
before the bicycle trip, so it's all combined with, I guess, changing life experiences as well. So I finished university, and then I started like full-time work, and then I moved out of home. So with those sort of changes, then like I stopped doing hockey as much because then the work hours changed, and I also changed location, so it was a bit harder to get to hockey training as well because once I moved into the inner city, I like gave my car to my little brother because I just wanted to like ride my one-speed bicycle around as well, which was awesome. But it meant I couldn't really go to hockey games anymore. It
Yeah.
was like that was a bit harder. And so I was doing that with still continuing like the self-driven physical training, still on like this 5-3-1 sort of shindig with mixed with Olympic weightlifting, just figuring things out. Um, I was running quite a lot as well because my housemate was also a very keen runner. I think at that time I actually started getting a bit interested in body weight as well because I remember trying
Mm.
to work out how to do like shoulder stands at this fitness first that I was going to. And there was this other guy there who was kind of like trying to figure it out as well. So we would try and figure out the L sit to shoulder stand transition.
Ah,
And at that time I was wondering, once you do that, like where do you go? Because like I never really comprehended the handstand or anything else. So it was kind of like when you went from like one plane, the L sit to the shoulder stand, that was like the ultimate, right? And then all you do is you go back down
yeah, yeah.
and just keep on repeating it. And then that felt good because it was intense in a bit of a different way. And then I was
Mm.
playing around with my body a bit. But I think at that time, so these previous injuries of mine that I had with the shoulder and the and my left foot as well I think it affected my movement patterns quite a bit, and I I didn't know how to explore or investigate them intelligently. So I had like these recurrent pains that kept on coming up in my body as well, where like in my right neck, like this upper trap tension was like constant as well. And so I could never really reach the strength levels that I had from when I was in uni, and I was trying to push myself up to there. But then when I would be
Mm.
almost getting to there again, then something would happen in my shoulder, and then it would just be like burning, or like my neck would seize up, and then like my whole right upper trap would be tense for like a week, like rock hard. Or
Mm.
with my hips, there was like something going on with my hips, and there was like a bit of a pinch, and so I had these like pains in my body where I was like, at the time, still going to the gym, still running, but I was fearful that I was just one step away from having a really bad injury. And I've had
Mm.
these bad injuries before now, so I was like, I don't want these bad injuries anymore because that sucks, right?
Yeah.
So I remember during that time, I was like, okay, like people think that I'm pretty fit because I'm actually like I run a half marathon, I'm doing strength training all the time, but inside I'm not feeling what I'm portraying externally out to the world. So
Mm.
that's where I really started like questioning with my physical training, like what the hell am I doing? And that was coupled with then these life circumstances changing to going like, oh, I also want to travel overseas, and then the bicycle trip idea formulating as well. Where I decided to, go on that big trip. And during that time, that's when I had this really big opening of questioning what I wanted to do in my life and how I wanted to orientate myself. So I remember when it was before this Christmas, I think it was like 2016, where I had the opportunity basically at 10 or 12 days off, where I could have just like gone out, partied, and just like enjoyed myself, like everyone. Um,
As you do.
all my friends were off, that sort of thing. I had the time off, like I could do whatever I want. But I was like, yeah, am I serious about doing this bicycle trip across China and Japan? Am I going to start learning Japanese? Like, am I going to be prepared for doing all this stuff? I've got all these pains in my body as well. Like, what the hell is going on there? So I sat down for 10 days, and for 10 days straight, I outlined three things in my life that I wanted to like improve on, which was like I needed to start learning Japanese, need to figure out what's happening with my physical body. And then third was at that time was like I wanted to become a lot better at making music as well, like, because that was one of my hobbies and joys. So then I set up this strict schedule where for 12 to 14 hours of the day I would cycle through each of these areas and be
Wow.
researching and studying and doing something. So it was
Huh.
during that period when I came along all these like mobility workouts because I think that was starting to like populate throughout the internet. So I was like, oh, okay, there's something else other than strength training. There's this thing called mobility. maybe I need some mobility. Maybe that's gonna help me with my pain. So then I started like
Mm,
getting into all that and like reading all about that. And then through that, that's where like I found Tom Merrick, the bodyweight warrior,
hmm.
and all his like rich resources, which are actually amazing. And I like started getting into all his workouts and all his information. And what I really, really am inspired by Tom is like during those days, he was crediting all of these sources and these people of where I was getting the information. So I think in some of the credits, he credited Yuri Marmestein for the shoulder
Mm.
band warm up. So I was like, who's this Yuri guy? Credited Emmett Lewis for all these like mobility stuff that he was learning as well. So I was like, who is this Emmett guy? And then he credited Ito as well with I think something. And then I got into the Ito thing and I was like, okay, what the hell is this?
Yeah,
And I think at that time, I was seeking answers to my pain.
yeah.
And then suddenly there were all these like new methods where I was like, oh, is this the answer to my pain? Because all these guys seem to be doing amazing shit.
Yeah.
And their methods seem to be like nothing that I've ever seen before. And they seem so capable. And Yuri, I think at that time was had some blog articles about injury management and prevention. Ito was saying the same thing about anti-fragility and all that sort of stuff. And then you're like, this makes sense,
Yeah.
at least to me. There seems to be something a bit more. Yeah, like I need to look into this stuff. And so at that time, you get into Ito's blog, and then he's got all the flow workouts. He's got the squat routine. He's got the shoulder band like routines. So I started just like doing all those. You do the squat routine 3, 4, 5 times a day. You start warming up your shoulders with the bands, like trying to stabilize them. And I did that like 2, 3 times a day because you're like, this is gonna fix me. And so that was my entry into all this.
So that's a good segue, I guess, into the present, or would start to lead us into the present. Um, I'll
Hmm.
just say it's very interesting hearing you describe what you were doing and why you were doing it, because I feel so many like there's some differences, and perhaps it's a story for another day, but personally I find a lot of parallels um, in my own life with what you're describing, like in many ways, like literally the same sort of stuff, like swimming and weightlifting, and then the injuries and the pain, and then
Hmm.
finding mobility, etc. So it's very interesting, and it makes you curious if because you and I are obviously in the same country. We're I think within a year of each other in age. You're 32, right?
Hmm. I'm
Yeah, so
33.
30. Oh, so we're currently the same age. Within a few months of each other, and I just wonder how many other people are out there, who have similar have had similar life experiences. Like I used to think that, say, the Power Rangers was such a niche thing. I thought I was the only one into it because I guess no one in my school seemed to be really as into it as I was, from my memory. But then now in my like kind of late 20s, early 30s, and you realize, oh, there were so many other people just like me who absolutely were obsessed with Power Rangers and still have this nostalgic, like,
Mm.
yeah, these deep nostalgia for it. So it's made me very curious how many other people, maybe people that we know, that we just haven't dug into their story.
Hmm.
Um, how many of those checkpoints run in parallel to one another? Um, and it's also very interesting. Yeah, you're very good at telling the story. It's very interesting listening to you. So let's bring that into. I think there's a pretty natural segue into the present there. So you found Ito's work in the blog and started practicing. And then I suppose at some point, as far as I know about you and your work, there's some sort of gap, and then we get to the development of the passive hang and of this interest in locomotion in particular. And obviously, at some point, you must have started to find teachers and not just finding resources that you are consuming passively in a sense, but finding people with whom you can actually explain your goals. They can assess you in a way, provide you with guidance. So that's something, yeah, I know where you're I kind of know where you're at, and now you've described up to the discovery of Edo, but could you fill in that gap um, to where you started finding teachers and finding your way into developing the passive hang and your interest in locomotion, especially?
Yeah, that's a good period. So so I started on this like quite long bicycle trip. Uh, for for those that don't know, I've spoken about this before, but I was like in China and Japan for 2 years riding around my push bike. And so during that period is like a very glorious period because you have this freedom of time, right? And I remember throughout that period, that's where I started using this time to research, to try start seeing other people. And I think this was when the movement, community, or culture, whatever you want to call it, started like growing more exponentially as well. So you start seeing all these guys like doing all this amazing shit as well,
Mm,
redefining the physicality that, before I thought it was just all about the squat, deadlift, all that sort of thing. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I've been shifted. There's all this other like crazy stuff that, for whatever reason, never clicked in my mind that there was like actually process and a way to get there. Like I'd always
mm,
love all the Jackie Chan movies, that sort of thing, but you just thought that was like he was just a crazy guy, or he was
yeah,
just like a unique character where and his methods of training you never really looked into. But then suddenly it was like, oh, all these characters, this sort of thing, and they're exposing a bit of their process, and you see their progress as well. You're like, this stuff is possible. You can learn it.
there's a
Isn't this
method here.
amazing? And so I remember when I would take these bike breaks, I was still like working on my mobility, that sort of thing. I had like some of these bands that I like brought along with me, so I'd be like on the side of the road, taking a bit of a break, doing a stretching break, trying to stabilize my shoulders, do some spinal waves, this sort of stuff, and that's where
Yeah.
I started just like exploring this wider practice, which was really interesting for me because then it was suddenly like
Mm,
I was enjoying my physical body outside of this 100% intensity level, and that was very new to me
mm,
because then it was like I didn't like the biggest thing that this idea or concept of mobility training at first was amazing for me was that it showed me a way to move and to physically express without going at 100%. So I was like, oh
mm.
wow. And then I do it and I still feel good as well. If not, I feel even better now as well. And you're like, holy shit. Like I was just doing strength all the time and then there's this stuff. Like what's happening? And then so you get addicted to that stuff. And then I started like, the first time you do a spinal wave, it's like kind of awkward, but then you walk away after the session, you're like, oh, like that felt really good. And so I started
Mm.
connecting with the feeling of going, I'm feeling good instead of just going like I'm feeling kind of like pumped up and like and spent because I started getting addicted to that feeling of like expending my energy. And I couldn't really do that on the bike as well because like I'm expending my energy riding 100 kilometers every day.
Yeah,
So then
yeah.
I'm just trying to like relieve my body uh this lot of stiffness of being in that same position all the time. So yes, started being like self-driven for a while, but near the end of my trip, that's when this idea came to me that I've been playing around with that I really wanted a guide and a mentor throughout all this. I knew that that was like very important because I was like, yeah, how am I organizing everything? I'm like trying to figure things some things out myself, but I knew that it wasn't quite clicking as well. So it was like makes sense to seek out a teacher. And so actually the very first teacher that I connected with that I was considering doing training with was Ryan Hurst of Gold Medal
Mm.
Body because I found out that he was living in Osaka and I was in Japan.
Ah.
And so I was like, holy shit, this guy is in Japan. Isn't this amazing? Like, maybe I should hit him up and see, like, where he is. And so I sent him a message on Instagram. And I think at that point, that was where, like, the direct message function on Instagram also, like, came to be. And then you started, like,
Mm.
realizing, wow, I can, like, meet all these people now that I've been following and that I've been getting inspired to. And there's this function to actually contact them. And I was like, wow. Because I sent
Uh,
like Ryan a message and then he sent one back. And I'm like, I can meet this guy. Like, this is crazy, right? And so I met with him and he was like super nice, you know. If anyone who gets the chance, like Ryan, he's just like one of the best humans ever. His energy is like so radiating, right? So I was like,
uh,
oh, okay, maybe I like need to look into this like whole gold medal bodies thing. So I did like a few of their courses as well. So it was like just training with some of their online stuff, and I was contemplating doing like the GMB teacher thing for a bit. But then at that point, then I found John Marsh,
mm,
and I don't know how I came across John Marsh, but John Marsh was running. Well, he wasn't running anything at that time, but he. I met him, and then I got on a call with him, and I had this really in-depth conversation, and he was offering, I guess, not only physical training, but also this business side to it. And coming to the end of this 2 year bicycle trip, I was kind of like, oh, I need to like sort myself out financially a bit. And I also need to like learn how I'm going to progress after this big life stage.
and
And I
for
really
those that
connected.
don't know, John Marsh at this, well, he still teaches a physical practice, but I guess you describe him as a small business mentor.
Yeah, small business mentor, coach. Yeah, he's for anyone who doesn't know his work. Um,
Yeah, out of
he
Newcastle.
just has Yeah, he operates out of Newcastle, Australia, and he just he provides a very real, very effective, very practical way of looking at business, and yeah, highly recommend all his stuff. And so after I met him, there was just a very strong intuitive feeling that hey, this is the guy. So, like, I signed up with John, and then at that time, he was just guiding me through some physical practice stuff, more like on the side to like a lot of the business and relationship building stuff that he was guiding me on. So,
Mm,
uh, yeah, he was quite important because he was helping me in a lot of areas of life, and he is the one who really started introducing to me this energetic model uh, of training, or not even training, of just like being in life. And so
mm.
that's where I started really considering a lot of my inputs and outputs within like energetic cycles and how I apply that. And that doesn't apply just to physical training, but you know how you're applying yourself to anywhere really, because that's how you expend or generate energy. And so that was really powerful for me there. A lot of the physical practice stuff, it was actually pushing me to still be very self-guided, because I told him that at that point that I had this desire to share, because I'm not sure what happened, but near the end of my trip, I just had this realization that hey, I was really like actually passionate about being physical, like as I had been all my life. Maybe I could actually do this in a way that was actually professional. And so that's where it kind of clicked within me, going, oh, I wonder what that would feel like. And so, because I'd expressed that want to John about being like a physical teacher, then he was like, oh, well, then I can guide you on some of this stuff, but you should practice on how to like program for yourself so that you know about how to just do programming. So
Mm.
I would go back and forth with him, going like, "Oh, I'm thinking about this because my goals are this, and I think you should do this," and I just kind of do that self program, and that was kind of like working. I mean, taught myself how to do that dragon squat, taught myself how to handstand, taught myself
Really?
all the sort of like, yeah, basic skills. I just like um, figured it out all myself at
Cool.
first, um, and that was when I then came back to Melbourne, and then once I came back to Melbourne, John connected me with his gym that he used to own, which is called Workshop Gym in Kew. And
Hmm.
so I started hanging out around there. At the time, his sister was still the owner. And then I started going to their classes there. I started running a weekend class that was kind of independent as well. That
Oh
was really
wow.
cool on the Sundays. And so that was all based around this idea of play.
Oh.
It was called a Dobby, and I just like because I really like the game element of what I was like doing on the internet as well, and I was trying to interpret it all and trying to share that um, with other people. But it was during that time that's when I met my previous teacher, Tijovra, because he was one of the coaches there. And it was at that place where I was finally actually getting like in-person like coaching and training and taught all these things where I was like, oh, I've been interpreting all this stuff on the internet and trying to do it, but now it's like I didn't know you were supposed to do it like that, or I didn't know like the intention was this, or there was like this cue that was missing. And then I
Mm,
realized that there was this whole level of layer of quality that I'd been lacking because I was like my own self-judge and I didn't have the
mm,
sense to interpret and to interrogate critically enough to be like, oh, my shape of my form is different and it's because of this X, Y, and Z reason, or I need to be doing something else. And yeah, I remember it was not only Tajova, but like the other coach there, Ego, where I was like, shit, even on the deadlift, I remember getting retaught how to do the deadlift with Ego, where I was like, this is fundamentally so much different to what I was thought it was before. And then I was
mm,
like, shit, I need guidance. I need to stop thinking I know what's best, and I just need to be going like, all right, you guys obviously know a lot more than me. I need to learn from you. And so at that point, that's where I started. Yeah, I started really bonding with TJ Tijova, and then I went under his guidance so one on one, and he really, yeah, like fundamentally changed like a lot about how like I approach training under this like lens of like understanding what how I was actually expressing myself through these movement patterns, like being aware of how I was moving. You can talk about say with the pull up. I never really thought
mhm,
about like what my scapula was actually doing, right? And then you suddenly like
mm,
once you're told to focus on it, I don't think it's so much about like oh, this is like the perfect way that the scapula should move because for a pull up. More importantly, I think is that you actually have the awareness of how it's moving when you're doing things. And so suddenly I was like, holy shit. I didn't know all this stuff. And he really, yeah, people talk about this mind to muscle connection as well. That's where I started getting more of this awareness of going like, say, pull up example again, going like, oh, how does the lower attachment of my lat feel when I do a pull up? I never thought of that before. But then suddenly you're like, oh, like when you put your mind and your focus to it, you can be aware of that.
mm.
And so, yeah, that really started dramatically uh, just shifting my perspective in terms of physical training and how to approach it.
It's an interesting, it's an interesting shift in thinking from thinking about what is this exercise going to get me? A common one might be, well, I'm going to do the bench press because it's going to get me a big chest and front of my shoulder and my tricep. And shift, it's an interesting shift from that to how am I doing the thing? Like how am I actually performing? What's actually going on during that press?
Mm,
And then realizing that there's actually many different ways it could be performed for even for such a simple, quite linear movement. And
mhm,
then ironically, in what I've found, and I'd assume you found the same, once you start focusing on the how, you actually start to get closer, almost inadvertently start to get closer to the outcome that you were aiming towards when you were just trying to get something out of it to begin with. Like once you start thinking about the orientation of the scapula relative to the torso during a press, the muscle development in the chest and in the shoulder and in the tricep um, starts to actually align with your expectations of what you should have been getting out of it to begin with.
Mm.
So it almost takes like not focusing on the outcome and just this shift of and maybe it requires some period of just focusing on trying to get the outcome and continuing to fail at that, like getting frustrated and never quite getting there, to then appreciate when you're exposed to a different perspective, a different way of looking at the movement itself, and then you don't even need to be told. It's just in, you can just tell. Oh, this is like I can. Of course, this is going to get me that development because now I'm actually aware of and feeling these muscles. I can feel the difference between doing it one way versus the other. Oh, and I notice I've been doing it that way the whole time. It's a very interesting contrast. Um, and I'm not sure if there's a way to teach that besides someone just like you did, just sort of happening to encounter it at some point. Um, what do you think? Do you think it's something that could potentially be taught intentionally?
It's like when physical training becomes this level of awareness training, right? Because
Yeah,
then it's just about like becoming aware of not only like your potential or how you're orientating, but how you are operating habitually and non-habitually as well. Um, can it be taught? Yeah, it probably can. Probably takes a intentional process, a good teacher, time
mm,
as well. It just depends, I think, on the certain person that you're probably trying to share that with. I think, yeah, if there's an intention there to be aware, and then that's communicated as well, I think that can be brought up. Like back when I was in uni or whatever, I just didn't really have any of that guide, right? Maybe that person wouldn't have been able to communicate to me with the words of being aware, that sort of thing. But maybe if there was a teacher that was talking about it in terms of like getting better technique and being able to lift better weight, but then showing me different points of how I am moving, it'd still be the same thing, right? But just on a different lens of communication. So,
mm,
uh, but it is probably a thing as well where at the start it feels good to be like overwhelmed physically and have this sense of work and have all the chemicals come into your brain afterwards going like, oh, I really like exerted myself and then my muscles are getting bigger and that sort of thing. I think that's a very important process as
yeah,
well. Like you need that. And then as you keep on continuing, yeah, your physical experience just keeps on transforming, keeps on maturing as well. And your level of sensitivity does increase over time. And so I think once that does increase, then you can start marveling at the fact that you have this sense of the lower attachment of your lat, right? So, like, that probably takes some while to just jump until you're like at that point, right? But you just got to respect that also, like, neurologically as well, you're we're wired in certain ways, and to rewire or to start getting awareness, to start feeling different things as well. Sometimes that may take a little bit of time. It may take a little bit of physical training so that your brain can adapt as well, so that you can feel and interpret these things.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting with awareness that it seems like those sort of the doors of perception once opened, it seems more difficult for them to start to close than it would be for them to continue opening.
Mm,
And often there's like these peak experiences for many people. You know, it could be a psychedelic experience through the use of drugs. It could be a psychedelic space you find yourself in through you know more natural means, I suppose, for lack of a better word. You know, it might be through just some peak experience that you have in your life, travel, um, something that happens to you in with relationships. But it is interesting that the doors don't seem to want to shut once they start to open. You know, there's an event, some moment, some development, and then now you've got some inertia, and it almost seems easier to move and to live in a way where those doors keep opening wider than it would be for them to start closing back down again. It's it's like how I often think you'll hear of people who will become um, again, for lack of a better term, they might become like a hippie. They'll come from the business world, and then
Mm.
they'll have some experience, and then they'll completely change their life, and um, become more about sharing and giving, and using less, etc., etc. But you very rarely hear about the hippie who becomes the suit and tie businessman. It seems to flow in one direction more easily. So if you're at a point then, so that those doors are opening, and you've now starting to maybe understand that those doors are opening, that I can be aware, and as I become more aware, I become more aware. And this is now fundamentally changing what I'm doing. So talk to me about, I guess, the transition from, yeah, and some of this I know from having known you at this point, but can you talk a bit about that transition from working under TJ up until the point where you're at now? And then also, could you start to describe a little bit about, yeah, the practice that you're actually doing now in comparison, and how it compares and contrasts to what you had been doing up until this point?
Yeah, so with TJ, in terms of my practice, so he was guiding me a lot through like all the body weight basics or body weight strength stuff. So waking up a lot on like a lot of pull-ups, planche push-ups, handstand work, mobility work, all that sort of thing. So that had like the sort of main core bits of work where I work on that progressively. But then over the top of that, we met weekly once on one in person, and then in that time, that's where we just worked on a variety of stuff. So that sometimes it was handstands, sometimes it was like repatterning the squat, sometimes it was like pushing the sled around, sometimes it was like doing neck bridges as well. And
Hmm.
so he would just keep on like showing me all these variety of tools that could be useful for me. And sometimes I incorporated some of them and sometimes I didn't. And so it was very free flowing in that way where, I had this like constructive practice which he programmed for me, but then outside of that, I could do whatever I wanted, and I wanted to explore a lot, and he gave me the tools and the capacity to do so. So that's where, yeah, I started feeling like, oh, I wanted to explore this whole locomotion world as well. So that was something that was like a lot, very much self-directed. Like TJ didn't provide me too much guidance for that. I think out of my whole time with him, there was probably like just a few sessions where we did some locomotion together, but very basic. One session he got me to do like it was intense. It was like 50 minutes of trying to do this like owl straight into low bridge rotation and just keep on going. And he was
Did you
like,
say 50, 50, or 15?
yeah, like 50 minutes of it. Like
Oh, wow.
it like had some breaks in between, but it was just like trying to piece it together in this like small, tiny ass indoor space because that's the only space that we had at that point. And like he just yeah, he just turned on the glare to me where I was just like, oh shit, I have to do this.
Wow.
So there was just like certain sessions like that, but then outside of that, like he knew that I was like interested in this locomotion stuff, but I think he just like gave me the tools and the capacity to express myself and to be able to learn it myself, which was really cool. And so that was where, yeah, I was just like finding what I could on the internet, saving Instagram clips, and then just trying to copy. Right? That's like
Yeah.
that's the only thing that I could do. So I was doing doing all that. Also still exploring quite a bit like on the mobility side as well, trying to understand like the whole flexibility development, like agonist antagonist relationships, all this sort of like whatever you could find, and then trying to experiment with that, which was which is really cool. And yeah, so I was with 2 years with TJ, which was yeah, really nice, powerful time. And then I know he said it at the start as well, going like, oh, you know, I reckon stick with me for 2 years, and then after 2 years, like it's good for you to find another teacher, and then to
Mm.
move on, and then to try and find another perspective. And so that's something that I really always have respected a lot with TJ. Is like he's always tried to really sort out like the best for me as well.
Mm.
When that means like not learning off from him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I was at this point like had a few conversations with Thomas Emerson, you know, via the podcast, that sort of thing. Really, I think Tom was very inspiring, similar with the way Ito has been aspiring to, because he's very like, you know what he stands for, and he holds that with such super high integrity, where he talks about being, you know, all about practice, because his thing is God praxis, and he really is all about that, but also about self understanding, development, embodiment, and you can sense that with the way that he communicates as well. So I was like, okay,
Mm.
I want to find out some more about like what's happening there as well, and not just in terms of like the physical practice, but about like, you know, the teacher himself. So yeah, started training under the praxis method, and that's where it has been like quite a big shift. So where I was ending up with TJ's training was like it was quite like intuitive driven by the end, where we had picked out certain elements. So I with TJ it started quite regimented. Then at the end of the 2 years was very unregimented at the end, very self directed, where I had picked out certain movement topics and I was working on that really like almost like by myself with him, just with like quite loose guidance, which was like pretty cool. And then with Tom's, it's like, as you know, it's like it's quite structured as well, where, you
Mm.
know, I have a morning practice, I have the practice, and then I have an evening practice as well. And suddenly you're like, I get 3 parts of the day where everything has kind of been decided, and you're just
Yeah.
like practicing this stuff. So
The
there,
pre-practice practice, the practice practice, and the post-practice practice.
yeah, there are some pros and cons to that, definitely for sure. And that's where at the moment, yeah, I'm working on still the handstand stuff, but also like soft acrobatics and mobility, uh, the body weight strength stuff. So still working on press to press the handstand work, and then also front level work, one arm chin up and handstand push ups.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's where the programming is concentrated around there. But in addition to that, I started capoeira at the start of this year, and so that's an additional practice which I make sure that I do at least like 2 3 times a week in addition to this practice. And so that's guided by a teacher there, but I also like to do some solo practice in that area as well. And I guess that's sort of superseded most of my like locomotion training, where before I was doing like a lot of locomotion training just with like the individual skill moves and doing it by myself. And capoeira is a very powerful container for like this for actually communicating with somebody and then working together, and it just has a whole new element of difficulty and challenge when, yeah, you're trying to actually be like martial with it as well, with attacking and defending, and it's not just you trying to move around in space, but move around with somebody else as well. So I've really enjoyed that, and want to invest more time in in that as well. Also because of the social cultural aspect of it as well. So yeah, that's how my practice is sort of divided up now at this time.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you're pursuing capoeira at this point, in contrast to the practices that you have, participated in up to now, where you have the swimming, which is very solo but competitive, the field hockey, which is very, it's competitive, it's a game, um, but social as well and more collective. And then even with the gym, you've got this, it's solo and non-competitive, and now you've got capoeira, which is its own unique thing, which is collective, sort of competitive, but it also doesn't have, as far as I know, it doesn't have a defined endpoint. There's no sort of clearly, there's no codified set of rules that state this is what we're heading toward. These are the conditions under which this game can end. This is how you beat your opponent. So it's this very interesting, and it sits in interesting contrast to the other types of practices you've done, in that it's collective, or well, no, it's more, it's individual in that you're doing that individually against one other person, but it's collective in that it's a group, it's still a group effort because you have these musicians, and it's both competitive and collaborative. It's like
Mm.
both a fight and a dance with your partner, as far as I can tell. Um, but it's with no set outcome in mind. Yeah, so
Yeah,
do you ever reflect on that in comparison to what you've done in the past?
yeah. I think you just as a person and as a human yourself as well, you change over time, right?
Mm,
So for for me, I think I was just I'm more always curious and seeking out new experiences as well and new ways of expression.
mm,
And I think that's what interests me a lot with capoeira is that it's not just like you're moving, but you're expressing as well. Because there's a lot of like you see very practiced capoeiristas, they like exude a level of like this playful expression as well.
mm,
They're not just doing the moves really robotically with the most efficient kick, that sort of thing. There's a sense of style, right? Because it's like
yeah.
a bit of a dance as well. And so that's what I'm starting to think about a lot as well is like the movement practice and what we're practicing is allowing ourselves to actually express our being in a more honest and truthful way as well. And when you get these tools and this feeling again of being able to do that, then then you can be like yourself, and
Mm,
yourself can be whatever it wants, but it is like, well, there's something about when you're in a certain like physical frame of mind and like physically capable as well, that if you want to do X, Y, Z sort of task, then you kind of have this feeling of, oh, you're like, I can do that. For some people, they can't just go out and just like um, do a really big jump and spread their arms wide, that sort of thing, because that feels like a little bit scary, or jumping down from a bit of a height as well. And so you can't express yourself in that sort of realm. And so I think like um, yeah, this term of this moving towards like movement enables self-expression is starting to resonate a bit more with me. That's why I am looking like more at these like freer, dancier type practices as well, because that's something I've never really done before. But when you see those people, there is a level of communication and expression that they can do, which attracts me and that I want to explore a bit more. It's not to say that
mm.
like yeah, like when I still like swimming, going to the pool, um, but this it's kind of like I've done that experience. I've expressed myself a lot in the pool for many years as well, and then with the hockey, it's like I do think about that, going to a team sport and then playing again and doing that. Maybe that's something that I'll return to as well. But at this point in time, this is, I guess, you're limited by the time and the energy and the resources that you have with you, and the opportunity as well
Mm,
that comes out to you. So like, um, when I was young, I just had the opportunity to swim because that was just something that my parents like gave me. When I was at university, I had the opportunity to choose to do hockey, and there was a hockey team at my university club, and there
yeah.
was people there that I bonded with, so that worked out really well. Right now, I have the opportunity to do capoeira because I did have that sort of in my mind for a bit, and you know how capoeira just like manifested for me was when I was in Okinawa when I was still traveling. I was actually at this food market, and then I was eating this really, really delicious plate of uh, I don't know what to describe it. It was um, like this the whole dosa Indian inspired sort of dish, and I was like, this is amazing. I started talking with the people who made it, and then they said that they were capoeira teachers, and they were like, oh, if you want to come, the first month is free. You can just try it, and so that opportunity just like manifested in front of me, and I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. Like this is
Uh,
like how can I say no? Then I started doing it, and then when I came back here in Melbourne, I was kind of I didn't actively search out teachers, but then that's where I met Bilal, who we know, um, who have who spoken with before, and then he was like, "Oh, I've been learning off from this guy here. Why don't you come join our group?" And so I had that connection there, and then this opportunity came to me to connect with these people and learn from them. So it's just like, okay, I'm interested in this now. The opportunity has arisen, and that's why I'm doing it. And then I know I've fallen down the trap before of trying to do too many things at once, right? With the hockey and
yeah.
doing gym and doing all that stuff. So it's like, okay, well, this is what I can manage right now, doing the workload with studying under the praxis system and doing capoeira. Let's appreciate these opportunities which have arisen um, in my life and invest in them and then see where that leads.
I often wonder if in essence, if we can make a choice at all, the only choice we can make is to either accept or to reject, because we don't choose we don't choose the vast majority of what happens. You know, as individuals, we're just a drop in this giant ocean, and you don't control the weather, you don't control other people's behavior, you don't control the animal kingdom or the vegetable kingdom. It's so much is happening that we have no influence over. But perhaps what we can do is choose to accept or reject, or maybe even ignore what happens when it happens to us.
Mm,
And we call that opportunity. You have an opportunity, and you could have said in that moment, capoeira, oh, thanks but no thanks. For some, if your life was a little bit different in some way, but you didn't. You accepted it. You accepted the offer and the opportunity, and then probably from that there was even more opportunities, and now you're open to the possibility of the opportunity of playing capoeira. So then you happen to encounter a capoeira school and in Melbourne, and you accept it. It's like how before you start driving you never really notice any of the signs on the road,
hmm
but then once you do, suddenly these things that were always there to begin with become apparent and become your reality, and then you can choose to accept or to reject them. Um, so it's yeah, maybe it's just this series of maybe the best we can do is have some sort of orientation, and and just it's either yes or no. Maybe it's more simple than we realize. It's just be open to the possibilities, and um, either accept or reject. But it's yeah, it's a beautiful story, and I guess to take us into the third and final chapter in this conversation, I'd like to ask you to predict or make a prediction, given the trajectory of your life thus far, or your your physical your life of physical practice, and where do you see where do you see, or how do you see it developing moving forward? Both, in the short term, maybe in the next like 1 to 3 years or so, or whatever period, but then also throughout the rest of your life from now until you're food for bacteria. Where do you see it going? Or where do you even hope it would end up?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, that this movement being a tool for self-expression, I think, is starting to rise a bit more within me. So like these areas where, when you watch some of these locomotion people, there is this layer of expression there. It's very beautiful to watch. There is like, and the best ones as well can like sort of exert their personality almost onto it. It's like this way of communication. So I am very like attracted to that. I'm attracted to like learning dance as well because that's something that I've never done before, and then partly because my partner always laughs at me when I try and dance, so it'd be like really nice to be able to do that. But then also because it becomes this very social thing as well, right? Like doing the salsa, being able to salsa with somebody, breakdancing,
Mm,
joining into that community. For me, what I'm seeing, which is a really great thing, is like you can use your physical body and your movement capabilities to enter into new social cultural contexts. And so now that I learned capoeira, right, I could potentially go to Brazil and just go to a capoeira school and start meeting people and start
mm,
practicing with them and have this amazing, wonderful time. Through this whole
mm,
movement culture business, I've been able to meet you, We can go to a handstand workshop run by Harry Williams and connect with all these amazing people. Like, isn't that's like crazy? If I never did this practice, I would never have that experience as well.
mm,
Uh, and so that's what I'm like quite interested in. And like, yeah, there's this whole like generalist perspective as well, and trying to develop yourself like generally. I think like what I want to avoid from moving down that path is trying to become like that solo practitioner or trying to work things out myself because I've tried that before and that's not the way. But then sometimes when you're trying to work something out new or this new sort of way of thinking as well, it can be a little bit lonely. Like, and I don't want to get, I don't want to go down towards that area. I want to like start meeting and sharing people. And, one way of
mm,
doing that is just to go into all these like established amazing arts already that have already been made, such as like going back into Taekwondo or like learning like, I don't know, Kung Fu as well, because then you're gonna meet and learn off all these like amazing people as well, right? And yeah, they have like probably some drawbacks as well. Maybe with a wider perspective, you're always like a little bit critical of some things as well because you're like, oh, maybe there's like a better way of doing things. But then part of it is also like choosing to accept that as the experience and that's almost like this sense of communion that you're doing with these people to connect with them so that you can have these joyful experiences, right? So
yeah.
that's what I'm interested in. I know I'll be like continuing capoeira for like quite a few years, I think, to get a certain level of depth. I want to be exploring more like the fear side of things. So that's where I see the elements of like acrobatics and like even parkour. That's I'm getting more and more interested in, and then also returning back to some elements of like martial arts as well. I think would be like
Mm.
very good as well. So that's where I probably see it. I don't know whether that's in the near future, like 1 to 3 years, or whether in the next 1 to 3 years I just keep on going down into more depth into like things such as like the handstand gymnastic strengths as well. Um, but yeah, there probably will be like this intuitive point where I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of a bit done with this. I want to explore these other sides, so I don't know where that will go. But yeah, definitely on the expression side, and then on the encountering your fear side, that's where I want to start exploring a bit more because I think that's where the growth is for me.
It's interesting how for many people, like this has been the conversation of the last couple of Instagram live chats as well, about how the practice, or for many people, they find themselves in a place of practice coming from a place of fear or of pain and of unnecessary, what they probably intuitively perceive as unnecessary suffering, that perhaps there's something that can be done about it. And it's just maybe it's just maybe I'm contriving this, but it just feels like there's an interesting and perhaps poetic bookending or parallel there where you begin from a place of fear and of pain and of suffering, and you use the practice to escape that or to resolve that. And then you come to a point where you start to become curious about diving back into, intentionally diving into a place of fear, of uncertainty. Um, Maybe the suffering is no longer unnecessary in a sense because you're not choosing it. So you're like, well, maybe that's the shift, but it does seem to be quite an interesting parallel there. It begins from fear that we're trying to avoid and can evolve into a curiosity about fear.
It's an appreciation of the stress, right? So it's
Mm,
like at the start, you're like, you feel a little bit helpless because you don't really understand the situation. You feel almost like a victim of the stress or the fear or whatever emotional things. And then as you start getting deeper into it, and then you start becoming more physically capable as well, then you start gaining the luxury of choosing what stress you want to engage in because you start understanding as well that you can't have like a life with no stress as well. You need like the right amount of stress. So you want to be in this position where you can choose and be adaptable to that stress as well.
yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes, yeah, it's, well, maybe it's good not to be able to choose at all as well, but then your response mechanisms are a little bit better than before as well. And so you're okay with that level of uncertainty. And in fact, the uncertainty then becomes a little bit exciting, right?
yeah, yeah. I guess we'll finish on something like this question. You, where do you see yourself deep into old age, or how do you hope that you end up? You know, say on it at 90, 100, 110, 120, perhaps years old. Um, yeah, where do you see yourself in terms of your physical practice? Maybe not the specifics of your physical practice, but yeah, what kind of life do you hope that you end up living, and maybe even how would you like to look back on your life, you know, on your deathbed in terms of your physical practice? What would you hope for?
You'd hope to be like physically capable up until like a very certain point to be able to do like a high level of functional tasks, right? Like I always really like it that right now when I clean up after my family eats that I can get down and duck walk around with the dustpan and get into all these little corners and just be able to do it and it's fine, right? Like that would be amazing to be able to still do that sort of stuff until whatever age, 90, 100, right? Until
Mm,
you finally like start really carking it, then just to accept that. That yeah, and then in addition to that, just to be able to again like express myself enough so that with my community around me that I can connect with them and I can still help them as well. So like recently I've really started connecting realizing a lot that what I intuitively really like is actually like generating and creating new ideas. And so that's something that when earlier, like say in music, the very powerful tool for that because you can just like make whatever music, right? And then you start connecting with that creative energy right then and there. I also like
mm,
making like physical stuff as well. So like yeah, physical body that can support like say if I always thought about like what it'd be like to make a shoe, right? So
mm,
if I still had the dexterity and doing all that to be able to explore those sort of desires into old age would be really cool. Um, and yeah, like from that active creating, then being able to then go out to the community around me and being able to offer, going like, hey, like I'm written this piece of music or I've made this shoe and I can come and go deliver it to your house and provide it to you as well. Um, yeah. In addition to that, will I still be like teaching and sharing this stuff into old age and old life? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe if I'm like, yeah, 110 years old and I can do this sick duck walk around the house and do the dustpan, maybe there's something worth teaching there to people about longevity. So that's a bit hard to say, but in terms of what I think I would like to see is that, yeah, I'd still be capable in that way to enable me to engage in those creative activities.
That's beautiful, man. I hope I can live long enough to wear one of your shoes one day, or hopefully two of your shoes one day.
Make a better version of Feiyu. That's the goal.
Oh wow! And you've already got the just call them Fayons. It brands itself.
Yeah. All right. Has to happen now.
There we go. We've manifested it, or we've begun the manifestation process.
Yeah, yeah. I love it.
Man, that was really cool. It was. I mean, I was engaged the whole time. It was great to hear you talk about your experience, and it's very interesting. Um, Kind of picking up different snippets about your life. Listening to you on podcasts. Speaking to you in person. And so it's really interesting to hear you describe this journey in your physical practice and how that sort of ran parallel and related to these different events in your life, like, being in school and university and your travels and, yeah, and just meeting these different people. I feel like I have a higher resolution map of Fayon now, integrated into my being, which is cool. And it was a pleasure to listen to you speak about it. So
Which you
thank
can
you.
download in one convenient IG Live clip.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully I can look back on this one day and yeah, relive it again. But it'll exist forever in posterity.
Well, thank you for hosting this chat and flipping the tables on me and being able to ask such great questions. So really appreciate that, Ben.
Sure, man. I feel like the questions are largely just so tell me about yourself, and now tell me more, and now tell me more, and then what happened, and then what happened.
This is what I do in the passive hang, man. It's like,
There you go. That's the secret.
yeah. But should we wrap it up here? I think it'll be a good chance, unless you got one other question or anything.
Um, no, nothing that comes to mind. I think that's a nice little package there. The past, present, and the future of practice as it pertains to Feon.
There we go. So yeah, hopefully this thing saves it. By the way, when I exit. So first time
We'll
using
soon
IG
we'll
Live.
soon find out.
We'll soon see. All right. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, man. Thanks for sharing.